Okay, Assalamualaikum. Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Dengar sir.
All right. Okay, we are right. Currently around 28 people, but I guess we'll just start. The sooner we start, the sooner we'll end the class because today's session isn't going to be my expectation. Today's session isn't going to be that long, and but that doesn't mean that this topic isn't that important. This is actually not the end, but almost at the end on how you can achieve energy target. So, hold on, yeah, let me check my settings. Okay, so don't forget to click your attendance in your future. I'll be checking that. By this week, I hope I'm able to compile everything. Okay, so we'll start. So for today, we're going to look into setting of energy target and plan. Basically, how you can the steps. Basically, it's just some more elaboration on the step we could do to perform audit, either by doing it internally or externally. And then we'll look into the measurement and verification, how you can do it based on ni lah, settings, measurement and verification, depending on what type of retrofitting that you might want to do. Okay, so the first step in performing energy and audit analysis, okay, bear in mind this section is again theoretical, so you can top up whatever that you are not focusing in the class today with your own reading. So again, theoretical, it's more on you spending on your own time actually. Whatever that you got from me is just study as shown. Whenever you join a class, only 20% of whatever that have been discussed will stick to you. So that's it. You still have to study on your own, but I've recorded everything. So hopefully when you study, you can revisit my lecture and enforce whatever information that you can gain from your own, as well as whatever that you gain in the class. Okay. Okay. So for the first part, when doing your energy audit, you have to, because at the start of energy audit, when the first time you did it, chances are you won't know what kind of actual information that you might want. So the first step to handle that is to basically prepare the scope of energy audit and analysis. Just the scope, not to do the work yet. And then basically what it entails is that uh, what area do you want to do, you want to focus on, what equipment you want to focus on, what kind of procedure that you might want to look at. So not to go into detail yet, but just to know the general idea of what you're going to audit and what you're going to analysis after that. And then you look into B, which is the resources requirement. The input, what kind of input you will be using, what kind of process, the pre-processing that might be needed, startup ke, nak kena stabilizekan proses tu dulu ke, a certain heating requirement ke. So you have to, and then how many person going to be there, need to be there. And then you should do, you can select whether you want to do internal or external audit. So for internal, it's from your own, hold on, okay, so if you're doing internal, basically it's in your own organization, where external, you hire external auditors. So for internal, you might want to assign responsible person from your own organization on top of the task that he or she might have already had in your company. And then the person themselves will conduct the energy audit, and they will give the report to you once they got the data, whereby external audit, you appoint external party. It might be more expensive, but at the very least, you don't overburden your staff, and everything is being done by other person. So all the worries, all the budgeting, all the worries, all the equipment purchasing and whatnot is falls under the external person, the external party, and therefore they will conduct the energy audit and accordingly. So that's the general idea what we are going to explore for organizing energy audit analysis for today. So then we'll look into each detail here: A, B, C, D1, D2, and then E, and then F. So for A, which is to prepare the scope, basically the first step is energy manager has to get together with all head of the EACs to make sure he or she, the energy manager, knows what are the requirements needed to conduct the energy audit. And therefore, scope should cover at least the type of data that needs to be collected, how many data needs to be collected, the area or the equipment that needs to be audited. This is basic, the minimum requirement. The time frame of the audit, because you can't do it all 24/7 typically, because audit also depends on the availability of the staff or the time process, whether it's being run office hours or 24/7 or only at night. So it depends. So it's a bit a hassle. You have to make sure that the time frame is adhered to. And then what are the expected result as you analyze the data? Because if you don't know what you're expecting, if you don't know what the outcome of the result, chances are your data, you won't know whether your data is collected correctly or incorrectly. So it's best that you refer to. That's why you need to refer with the head EACs to make sure that the expected result, at least you have a general idea what kind of data that you should get. Because if you went in and know that certain data is supposed to be behaving this way, and when you done it and you found out that the data is giving a random number, then you would know that, okay, this auditing time isn't actually correct, because they need to be doing some troubleshooting. So it saves you time there. And maybe you can re-engage the audit process, and therefore be able to get the correct data in timely manner. Okay, so bare minimum, when you do an auditing, you should, when you're trying to predict the scope, these are the bare minimum that needs to be there. Okay, and then to study the resource requirement, basically again is what type of input or what kind of preparation that you need to do. Sorry, tadi saya cakap pasal input, but it's more on the preparation. What kind of metering equipment required, how many person needs to be there, and budget if, let's say, metering equipment and manpower aren't sufficient enough. So metering equipment, it can be divided into two. The organization level as a whole, basically you're trying to measure the whole organization level punya energy consumption. So it might not be very explicit to a certain equipment, whereby EAC level can be very explicit to certain types of equipment. So they might need their own metering that caters to their energy consumption. So, for example, for energy level, organization level, typically you will measure kilowatt hours. For EAC level, it can be kilowatt hours, it can be gigajoule, it can be liter. Apa? So fuel kan, fuel pun energy juga. So it can be in liter lah basically. If you use gas, if you use other types of fuel, for example, coal, it can be in kilogram, pound, or whatever unit it's being used to measure the purchasing amount lah, the amount being used. Okay, so organization level is basically for the whole organization, and EAC level may need to cater specific types of input and output in the requirement parameters. Okay, and then C, where we look into the types of audit that you can choose, either internally if you have the capacity, the manpower, but if not, you may have to spend some money on engaging external auditors. So internal staff, that means you can save some, but you might overwork and you might have to pay your staff to personally, on top of the current work that he or she might be doing already. And it might be a bit slow the process, because you need to send the staff to the training center first to get their energy management courses, and then for them to also do their current work. So it might not be ideal for all environment, for all scenarios, depending on the size of the organization. You may want to engage external auditors who may have already all the equipment necessary to, and the process necessary, and experience especially necessary to complete the tasks. Okay, so again, for internal audit, you can only achieve success in auditing if you have adequate metering equipment, installed, and also capable staff available. If your internal staff does not have energy management license or training, then you will need to wait some time until he or she completed the tasks, or maybe when he or she is available to go to that training, and then after that, for them to wait for them to conduct the auditing process by themselves juga lah. So time frame is a bit longer if you're engaging internal staff, whereby for external audit, you can almost conduct the auditing process almost immediately. Okay? But of course, external audit might cost you a higher amount of cash cost. Sorry. And then for D, to assign responsible person or select external expert, you might want to, if you're using internal auditing method, then energy manager and head of EAC may have to allocate internal staff or some more elaboration to take care of the energy audit, whereby for external audit, you may want to look for external expert by evaluating their credential, their CVs, their working record, and then a full proposal that includes the technical and financial proposal. So as you can see, the difference here is that if you're engaging the internal staff, you can almost appoint almost immediately, but the problem is he or she, the one that you appoint, might need to come up with a little bit more time to come up with the proposal, whereby if you engage in the external audit, once you have selected the appropriate experience, personnel, and background, whatever, it will also come with the technical and financial proposal once they have done their auditing process, compared to internal staff, much more quicker. Because they have the experience, they have all the knowledge, so the proposal can come up almost immediately, whereby the technical and financial proposal from internal staff may need to be hashed out for a bit of time before it can be considered as a proper technical and financial proposal, because chances are that internal staff will be the first time doing this proposal. So There are bound to be some mistakes here and there lah, as advised by ST or all the necessary parties lah in your energy management committee. Okay, a bit boring, but I guess it's a bit dry subject lah kot. So dengar je lah ya. Okay, and then finally, to conduct the energy audit themselves, you need to prepare the work schedule that take into account the productivity, production time, and condition of the machine, because you can't exactly do energy audit if there's machine shutdown, because when there's typical lah ni, kalau dalam in factory, there will come a time in a few years lah, maybe once in 3 years or 5 years, where the machine will need to be shut down to clear all the debris, to calibrate balik, depends lah, troubleshoot semua ke. So you need to make sure that your work schedule understand and follows accordingly to the condition of the machine, also with the production time. Janganlah time sale tengah tinggi, so orang pos memang tengah kejar production, time tu lah nak buat audit, memang bergaduh lah awak dengan your top management. And also productivity, to make sure that samalah case dia macam production time and productivity ni lebih kurang. And then you need to make sure that you choose the appropriate timing to collect the data, so that accuracy and precision of the collected data also reflect the energy consumption of the organisation. That means macam tadi, tengah sales tengah tinggi, demand tengah banyak, and company has to fork out, chuck out tons of product. But at that time, you do your auditing, let's say lah, your top management agree, and you because your auditing process may not interfere that much with the productivity and production time, so you decided to do the energy auditing there. So the problem is, in a year, maybe only once or twice a month je yang demand tu tinggi. So waktu tu memang energy spike lah. So it wouldn't be good if you measure and if you choose that timing, because for the rest of the year, that energy consumption is actually twice or 3 times the normal energy consumption of that organization. So that means your data reflect poorly on the actual energy consumption, a normal energy consumption of that organization. Maybe you kerja kilang Santa Claus dia, for example, nak fork out toys, bukan Santa Claus lah, kilang buat toys. So waktu Christmas ni memang sales tinggi lah, so memang banyak lah nak kena keluarkan produk. But for January until September lah, I guess, the energy consumption isn't actually that high because the demand isn't that high. So that means your energy collection, data collection is wrong lah. Doesn't reflect the actual energy consumption of the data. So that means you need to select auditing process to appropriately with the time and the method to collect the data to need to be concerned of the actual production time and whatnot. Okay. Okay, and then once you got the result, the collected data must relate to energy consumption for each area of the machine as required by the scope of works, of course, because your data comes from the machine, so it must reflect the energy consumption for that machine or the area that you're measuring. And then analysis should cover organization level, EAC level, and also equipment level. The organization level is basically the performance and activity, conservation activity of the organization as a whole, where EAC level, only on EAC level, the consumption, performance, and conservation. But for equipment level, it's more on the efficiency or performance of the machine itself, so that you can relate from macro level, which is the organization, to the micro level, to the equipment level, so that you get the best picture available on the energy consumption of that organization as a whole. And then only then will you come up with a proposal to implement energy conservation measures, or ECM. And then after you got the data or after you have done the analysis, you can use your analysis to compare and basically do benchmarking with other outside factor, outside punya reference lah. Either you can use industry best practice, any kind of laws and regulations that pertains to the energy consumption of your organization, previous information within the organization themselves, such as EEI baseline that you have set up from the past years, and then any guideline of energy consumption for industry, basically the spec sheets or energy consumption record for the machine available for typically sometimes some manufacturer does provide the energy consumption data for a typical machine, some machine. And then spec lah, again, guideline of energy and also specification is almost the same, but for specification is more on the, what do you call that, the specific, what do you call that, the machine itself, whereby guideline is from the manufacturer on or how to properly operate their machine. Okay, the energy, once you have done the analysis and got the benchmarking, Energy Management Committee and head of EAC must brought the energy audit and analysis result to be implemented in order to realize the real energy, the actual energy saving in that organization. There's no point of doing analysis and auditing if you don't implement energy saving measures, energy conservation measures to realize the energy saving. So you might as well just throw the money out the door lah, because in order for you to do audit and analysis, you have to spend some money. So but if you don't, if you are not ready to implement, then there's no point lah. Audit, analysis, tapi tak ada kerja lain. Tak implement. So what happen is every single year your audit and analysis tu macam sama je lah result dia data dia, sebab there's no real except for demand from the market. So actually it's not good lah. An energy target and plan has to be formulated and implemented each year once you have done the audit analysis. So each year you need to update your energy target and plan to achieve real energy savings accordingly. And then now we're set into, or once you got all the data from an audit analysis, now we look into how to set energy target and plan, ET&P. So first, you need to cater saving target. Then you need to select and prioritize which energy conservation measures that is applicable to achieve the saving target, and then set up the implementation plan. Which once, let's say you decided to use ECM1, for example, how are you going to implement ECM1? Which department going to be for it to be implemented, and which department can wait for a bit until this section can be completed and whatnot. Okay. Who are responsible for setting up the energy saving target? Or at organization level, the EM committee lah. Nobody else. Memang EM committee has to analyze the result and then revise energy saving target. And once they got that revision, they pass it down to the EAC level. And at EAC level, the head of EAC set the saving target for his or her own EAC to match with the organization level energy saving target as set as been stated by EM committee for their own machine and equipment to match lah, basically the organization level saving target. Okay, so it trickles down from organization level, start first. Once they got the audit data, they revise the energy saving target, and each EAC will then try to match the saving target by setting their own energy saving target for their machine and equipment. Okay. Okay, so to achieve this saving target, there are two ways, actually three ways, without any criteria, against external information, against internal information. So without criteria, basically will be done during first years lah. Basically, you don't know what to do. You don't know. Basically, there's not enough information available collected to help you, to assist you in deciding what target needs to be done. So you basically just go blindly lah. Just decide what you want, and then for the second year and third year will be more accurate and will be more custom fitted to your organization. And then the second one, against external information. Basically, if you have competitors or colleagues in another another organization that typically use the same machinery, you can use benchmarking benchmarking punya approach lah. Basically, whatever he or she able to get from over there, you can compare with yours and try to select the next best value. Because of course you can't achieve him or her punya level, because the commitment by the EM committee and the top management, and also funding. So what you can do is maybe slightly lower benchmarking. Here, let's say his value is at 1,000 kilowatt hours. Try to set yours at 800 ke 700 ke kilowatt hours, depending on your organization or equipment punya capability lah. And then set up target against internal information. Basically, all the data that you have collected from the first year or second year, and let's say you're doing this target and plan for the third year, then you can control much more accurately lah your saving target and energy plan. So this is more after you have done the second, at the very least second year lah. Once you have that first year punya data, then you can against your internal information themselves. Tak payah nak leak your own data to the outside company lah, outside of the organization. So this is maybe the first year. This is also the first year, can also be the first year, but if you have, let's say, colleagues and your top management agrees to adhere to, you have to adhere to towards company confidentiality. And this one memang company confidentiality lah. So tak perlulah kacau siapa-siapa, memang be between your own. So selamat sikit lah. Okay. Typically, benchmarking can be done using, if you're comparing with other companies, this will not be very easily available sebenarnya, EEI, because tak semua company suka nak reveal their own energy consumption, because then people will know what kind of machinery they might be using, what kind of production that currently they are, for that year they are producing. Because if it's about image and also industrial secret. So if I think business student tahulah benda ni, image ni, how penting it is for company branding name ni on the image. Because kalau tak penting, kenapa this company buat yayasan anak yatim lah, apalah. Branding penting regardless of company. Branding, people, Petronas ke, how many huge, buat apa Petronas spend millions on F1, right? So comparing with the EEI, let's say lah, you got EEI data from your company that has the same amount of machinery and whatnot, and the same amount of process. The competitors are basically, what you can do, let's say the EEI is at 400, maybe you can try to exceed that 400 to at 425. You set the target at 425. Of course, the first year you're not going to achieve it, but let's say lah, your owner kata, okay, kita mampulah nak cover all the necessary expenses, nak pasang retrofit from high to high end punya ni, maksudnya solar panel, wind turbine lah, apalah. So then maybe you can set more lah, 450. But if let's say the ECM proposed is just maybe a few savings up to maybe 50 or 60%, then try lah to get as best as you could. Orang kata shoot for the moons. If you don't get it, at the very least you could shoot for the stars. If you don't get the stars, at the very least you'll arrive at the moon. So something like that lah. So you shoot for the stars, 425. But at the very least, if you don't get 425 pun, you'll be around the average industrial target lah, which is at 400. Set at 400. If you don't get 425, you'll get 400. For example, we'll see. Of course, this also depends on other variables, but typically this is what happens during my colleagues, Dr. Nabil punya experience in the industry. So next best value. Okay, and this is basically how EEI looks like. I think we'll be doing it in a few classes after this. I'm not sure when. I'll look into it in a bit, but basically this is how EEI would look like. Let's say, for example, this is again production against power consumption. For the data that I have, if I'm not mistaken, monthly basis power consumption. So what you will see January till December, and you plot the actual power consumption data, and then you try to get the relationship between all those data. Basically, you do linear fitting, and once you got the equation, you can consider that as your EEI lah. And then you can main-main lah dengan that equation. Either you reduce kecerunan ni, typically tak boleh lah. What you can do is the offset. You can arrange, maybe slightly reduce the kecerunan, the mx ni kan y equals to mx plus c, linear equation. So m ni maybe you can be a bit, but typically the main arrangement will involve a lot more with the plus c here. The offset, basically you play around with the starting machinery startup scheduling or whatever operation scheduling will affect this side lah. So this is EI. So in this case, rather than change all those dia kurangkan energy consumption towards the lower end, the blue line here. Either that, the blue line ni lah. So dia set the target of energy plan to the most lowest energy consumption shown here. That is practically applicable to the machine itself. Because as you can see, the line is almost the same. M and X is almost the same, except that the offset is a little bit lower. Rather than 49.722, now it's at almost zero lah. I don't think it's achievable, but target and plan, you shoot for the moon, but if you don't get it, at least you get somewhere lower, still lower than the original EEI baseline, right? Okay, and then once you set the target, you want to select and prioritize whatever ECM that has been proposed. So what you need to consider before you select a specific ECM is that the first being the policy, the company policy, and the energy policy of that organization. And then you will need to consider the criteria in terms of energy saving and also the investment needed to realize the ECM that you're trying to select. And then after that, you look into the amount of energy saving, which one would yield the best energy saving once it has been implemented. The best energy saving from all the ECM being proposed. And then you need also to consider if, let's say, for yearly basis, let's say, what do you call that? Each year you need to sustain the ECM. So how much budget needs to be allocated either to improve or to maintain the ECM that you're implementing. Of course, if it's just scheduling and whatnot, it's okay lah, free je, tak payah fikir apa. Maybe kalau nak improve pun, tambah seorang lagi pekerja to operate it at graveyard shift lah, for example, scheduling. Then you should also include the budgeting lah for improvement, because you need to hire another person. And then the human resource required to implement the measures, how many person, how many staff that needs to be allocated to observe and make sure that the measures has successfully been implemented. Any effect on the operation and also the production plan towards implementing the ECM. Kalau buat energy saving tapi kacau productivity, tak boleh juga. Tak nak. So make sure ECM does not interfere with the operation and production plan. So these are the steps that you know. These are the basically steps that you need to focus on once you want to prioritize which ECM that you want to pursue. First, implement the no cost first, the no investment measures ECM. And then you look into the medium investment measures. And of course, lastly is the large investment, because this is typically how your proposal going to be approved by your top management. Again, to realize your energy saving, you need to get commitment and also approval from top management. So these are the things that top management will look into quite heftily. So no investment measures typically can be implemented by scheduling, by turning on, turning off. So benda yang simple je, tak perlu nak invest sampai ribu-ribu, ratus-ratus ribu pun. So you can implement it almost immediately, except for scheduling. You might want to check with the data from the machines first. Medium investment, maybe change the lighting, instead of individual air condition unit, internal and AHU yang ada satu bilik satu aircon tu, you might want to tukar centralize a bit. Centralize pun sebenarnya mahal, tapi tukarlah kot, maybe natural lighting ke apa ke, or maybe tukar machine tu, invest in a new machine that is more efficient, that has the 3-star or 5-star punya rating kalau compared to previously pakai machine yang zaman tuk kadut dulu tu, tukarlah. So that's considered as medium. Large investment, basically you overhaul all your organization punya machinery ke, lighting ke apa ke, by introducing renewable energy, or totally redesign the whole building, office tu, buat building baru yang zero energy consumption punya building tu, then that's the last step that you need to pursue and propose lah. However, the order of the implementation can be different if you have the right resources and budget commitment from the top management. So kalau your top management ni, maybe your company ni SP Steel ke, YSL ke, I think YSL apa nama, yang cement, YSL tu fashion brand. Sorry, YTL yang cement. Kalau you guys realize tahun 2000, I think 2014 or 2015 kot, there's news about YTL founder punya house dekat bukit mana tu, cantik gila tu. That building not only is very tastefully done, not only orang kata interior design cantik semua, but they also incorporate tons of renewable energy punya concept. Not to say they install solar panel, but it allows for natural cooling. Dia banyak open air. The design take into the architecture I guess, take into account lots of cooling element being done naturally. That's why they put the building on top of a building, on top of a hill. Not only for feng shui, I guess for Chinese they believe in feng shui, but also for atas bukit angin kuat, sedap. Siapa yang pernah duduk atas bukit suka lah kot. So that actually requires tons of investment. Nak buat rumah macam YTL founder tu berjuta. Okay, but if let's say memang your owner is the YTL punya company, chances are your budgeting is huge and you can terus jump ke medium to large investment measures lah. Okay, set up implementation plan. Finally, EM committee has to set up implementation plan for ECM and integrate other activities with the organization. Basically, the most important factor here is human resource. Who or who or what are the structures of personnel that needs to be in the SIT team. And when, implementation plan has to comply with energy saving target and investment plan of the organization, not only on the EAC, but the whole organization themselves. So they need to be the focal point of the implementation plan ni lah. Okay, tak silap saya, SIT ni can be disbarred ataupun once the energy saving has been achieved, SIT can be dibubarkan lah, can be sebab this is just implementation. So once implementation has been done, SIT team can be dismantled lah. So they can focus their own work after that. Okay, so then we look into the last chapter, which is the last subchapter, which is the measurement and verification for today. M&V concept, basically, you calculate the energy saving based on the previous year punya energy use, subtracting the post-retrofit energy use. Basically, energy saving, if you got positive number, that means it's good lah. That means previous year, the year 1, and this is year 2. If year 1 is bigger than year 2, that means your energy saving is successful. But if your energy saving is negative, that means your year 2, after you have retrofit everything, you find out that your energy saving is using a lot more number, because the number is higher than the previous year. So that means your energy consumption is higher in the second year, even after you've done all the retrofitting, all the scheduling, all the switch on, switch off semua tu, apparently lagi banyak. So you have to find out. So your energy saving isn't realized lah sebenarnya. So you might want to find out and propose another ECM for the next year. So that shows that your energy saving has failed lah for that year. Adjustment can be done in the sense of macam saya cakap tadi, second year tu rupa-rupanya after you have done some investigation, you found out that it's because the second year tu demand tinggi, production terpaksa banyak, so machine tu terpaksa operate quite a long time lah. So rather than compared to first year, maybe time to COVID, MCO, so kilang shutdown. Of course, second year numbers going to be very huge because the first year MCO to 2020, everything shut down. So data tu tak available, tak bagus lah. So you need to adjust the first year ni using normal operation data at the second year, and only on the third year you can measure your retrofit data as valid for energy savings. So you have to make sure adjustment is being made. Because maybe the first year tu some condition like weather, occupancy rate because of MCO, level of output because of the demand of the market. So depends. So you basically that's how you measure energy savings. And then there are 4 options that you could pursue in terms of measuring and verifying your retrofit. The first being partial measurement of retrofit by isolating. So basically you isolate specific equipment energy usage from the whole organization punya energy usage. So ECM yang implemented to the machine, because you just want to measure whether your ECM implemented for that particular machine, let's say for example, boiler, and you want to schedule the boiler operation because you know that the boiler is the most energy consumed piece of equipment in the organization that has the biggest factor of energy consumption for that organization. So you want to measure that machine themselves by the ECM that you have prepared for that machine. So you isolate that machine by having their own meter, their own equipment, their own whatever needed to realize your energy saving from the rest of the organization, so that you get the actual data for that machine themselves, not the whole organization. Because if you lump sum it up with the organization, chances are you don't know the actual energy being used for that machine. So like in the conclusion, For option A is more specific to a certain cases for a machine themselves. That doesn't mean you can't lump sum it up with the other data got from the other machine, but for this particular moment, you just want to pursue option A to get the equipment energy consumption themselves as it affected by the ECM that you have proposed. So this is option A. And option B, the same as option A, except that now full measurement. Okay, sorry. For option A, one thing is stipulated. Some parameters being stipulated, that means maybe some parameters too you can't access. You can't install any measuring meter, or you can't measure the actual value of, for example, flow of liquid into a machine is actually very hard if you can't stop the machine operation. Typically people will install flow meter at waktu mula-mula nak install machine tu, not during, let's say lah, for example, you baru nak implement energy saving, so machine tu dah lama, dah bertahun-tahun ada, and you nak measure, so you tak boleh simply tutup machine tu, pasang flow meter. It's going to be very hard. So that said, maybe you refer to external party, macam mana flow meter typically, how much flow being consumed for this type of operation based on best industry practice, and then you got the data, so you assume that data for option A. Basically, you ballpark the data based on the data that you got from industry. To assume, basically the data is being assumed. Some of the data is being assumed. So that means the input is being assumed. Let's say it has 3 input. You can measure 2, but the one that you can't measure, you assume based on industrial practice. So that is option A. Option B, the same thing as option A, except there's no data. Everything is being measured. All the data is available for you to measure, to install meters, to tap directly to the machine. So that is option B lah, full measurement. However, this is not this. In most cases, option B isn't preferred to, because it also include with the costs. The costs might be increases, because now instead of your installing only 1 or 2 meters, now you're installing maybe 5 meters. The oil coming in, the gas coming in, the coal coming in, boiler ni pakai 3. And then you have to measure the temperature, the pressure of that boiler, and then finally the meter of electricity being produced, the losses from the machine meters and whatnot, whatever not lah. So meter tu sebenarnya tak murah. It's actually quite mahal. The meter itself is affordable, but the installation of the meters tu yang mahal. So it can go up to maybe 1,000 or few 100,000. So option B is actually not favorite lah among top management punya approval lah in terms of ECM. So typically people choose option A, but option B ni is the most accurate data that you could get, because you don't have uncertain level, because you do not assume any data, because everything is available in terms of figures and numbers. Okay, so this is option B. Option C, the whole facility is being measured and verified, but again, this is costly. Basically, you measure the whole use of utility meters and submeters to assess the energy performance. So it can be costly, because you need to go through a whole lot of meter and submeter. And then you can assess the impact of any type of ECM, but not individual. That means you can't pinpoint this machinery produce this much amount of energy. But what you can do is you can pinpoint, this organization provide this amount of energy, or maybe this warehouse provide this amount of energy, but you can't go down deeper than that. You can go down only on EAC level only. Okay, so it includes any other impact on the facility energy use and same thing. So it can be done where the savings are expected to be large. So because it includes the whole facility, so you're going to invest a lot of capital being drained down the drain, I guess, the sewage. So typically owner will agree to this when they realize the savings are going to be in terms of at least 50% of their yearly bill, not monthly bill, yearly bill. So kalau yearly bill dia 500,000, dia dapat simpan 200,500, then dia agree lah, maybe chances nak approve tu tinggi lah, option C dia. Okay, and then option D, which is the last one, which not preferable, but if you don't have the access, you don't have the money, you aren't able to stop the machine from working for you to install the meter, then you can do simulation, calibrated simulation, basically using computer simulation software that uses the same machinery that operate the same amount of, basically you have to be very specific lah for that simulation to be accurate. Itu pun with the same machinery apa semua pun still with the range of assumption needs to be made lah. It can be very off, can be accurate, but mostly people will use this if they have no other options lah. So the same thing you need to consider base year energy use minus post retrofit plus minus adjustment. So for this case, calibrated simulation, the adjustment is very critical so that your simulation is accurate. So it assesses all ECMs the same as option C, but it's much more cheaper with tolerance of errors. Allow estimation of the saving attributable to each ECM within a multiple ECM project by multiple running of simulation tool may also be used to assess the performance of option A and option B. But typically, simulation is preferable for the whole organization because the variance will not be as critical as option A and option B, because option A and option B is very specific to the machine. So if the variance can be very huge in terms of accuracy of the simulation produced nanti. Okay. Option D is best to be applied when the base year or post retrofit data isn't available. That means you can't install meter. You're coming in as the organization is still new into energy saving, so there's not tons of data readily available. So simulation is the best way lah. There are too many ECMs to assess using option A or option B. So that means your machine tu memang totally complicated. Banyak sangat input output. So ECM tu terlalu banyak. So simulation is the best way lah. Because if not, you go to the data to collect the data, then your measurement and verification going to be very complicated. So you don't want that. You might just want to simulate lah. And that ECM involve diffuse activities which cannot easily be isolated for the rest of the facility. That means the ECM that you want to implement need to turn off certain equipment in a certain department. You don't want that, especially when it's involved production. So therefore, simulation is the best way. That means you don't want to interfere with the production of another department, or maybe certain parties need to stop work that involve critical time frame ke apa ke. So that ECM need to be shut down. So tak boleh lah. So, kena simulate lah. Okay, and also interactive effect between ECM with other equipment is complex. Again, when it's complex, simulation is the way to go. That means you don't have to stop one ECM because then you will need to stop another 2 or 3 ECM, for example. And major future change to the facility are expected. So rather than you stop everything during the period of saving determination, and no realistic means can be found to track or account for the energy impact. Basically, if you can't let's say, for example, in the future, rather than this company, this organization produce cement, maybe next year now they produce apa ni pula, bricks. Nama dia bricks. So all the machinery will be changed, all the personnel will have to retrain and whatnot. So it's a major future change to the product. So that means all the machine will be changed. So that means your measurement, your ECM will not be applicable to next year, for example. So everything is being shut down, so you can't measure. So now you have to do simulation. This is for reporting. Typically, people will need to still need to report to Suruhanjaya Tenaga because their energy consumption, to show that they are committed to energy saving. So their energy consumption tu kena yearly reported so that they can maintain the 3-star A-MAS punya apa tu. Maybe lah, depends on the organisation punya direction. Okay. So that is all for today. I ramble quite a bit, but it's a very dry subject. There's nothing I can elaborate much on that. Again, I think in a few weeks' time, we'll look into some case studies and then you need to do your group project. Okay, so for any questions? Does anybody has any questions or concern that they might want to raise to me today?
No, doctor.
Okay. So if there are none, then I guess we can end our session today. Again, sorry.